A great gator-sized greetings to all of you. Today we're talking about immigration. Who's saying what? About who? Now that Brat Summer has sadly ended and we've entered, holy the fate of democracy is completely on the line fall. Coming to you live from the swamp, the Gilmore Show. We done knew Republicans are big old turds about immigration. They always have been. Demonizing immigrants is one of their core passions, like hating women, gerrymandering, and breaking new ground in human furniture sexual relations. They're f***ing couches! In short, Republicans are trash on immigration and everything else. Let's leave them to the side for a moment, secure in the knowledge that whatever it is they have to say about immigration, it's horrible. Oh, the Democrats, sweet Democrats. The party whose roughly 93 texts and emails per day remind me that they are the only hope for preserving democracy, so long as I have just $27 to help them do so. Oh, why do I reply stop and immediately after that get another one from another number? What the hell? For many years, the Democrats have gotten their tongues all twisted up talking out both sides of their mouth on immigration. If it were a flavor, it might be a Republican light with a twist of consolation. Yeah, they'll talk about paths to citizenship, and yeah, they'll talk about DACA, and maybe it's not great to put kids in cages. But in the same breath, with nearly the same gusto as Republicans, Democrats talk about getting tough on the border. They've been at it for decades. Here's old Billy C. at the 1995 State of the Union.
That's why our administration has moved aggressively to secure our borders more, by hiring a record number of new border guards, by deporting twice as many criminal aliens as ever before, by cracking down on illegal hiring, by barring welfare benefits to illegal aliens. In the budget I will present to you, we will try to do more to speed the deportation of illegal aliens who are arrested for crimes, to better identify illegal aliens in the workplace, as recommended by the commission headed by former Congresswoman Barbara Jordan.
The third way means you drive right up to the edge of a shitty Republican talking point, reverse a few feet, and declare yourself not as bad as the Republicans. They even got a tax-free grifter group up in Washington, a think tank for modern center-left ideas. Old Gilmore would describe them as a left-punching, good-idea water-downerer organization. That's probably why they didn't let old Gilmore write the About Us page on the Third Way website. Yeah, well, you know. Now it's election season, and Democrats are gonna Democrat and freak out about a perceived electoral weakness rather than lean into their strengths. Heading into the 2024 elections, immigration consistently polls as a top concern for voters of both parties. Nearly half of Republicans consider it their top issue, and an overall majority of all voters consider it to be their top priority according to Gallup polling from June. Voters across the political spectrum are talking about immigration in ways that we haven't seen in this country since the post-9/11 mania. Dick Cheney's back in the news too these days. If we're redoing the early aughts, maybe Gilmore should bring back his frosted tips, huh? Now I'll leave that to Guy Fieri. These days, the far right's winning the argument on immigration. More people say they want immigration to decrease. More people say they want a wall. Hell, over half of Americans say they support mass deportation. What? Just throwing people out on their ear? In the midst of this surging nativist hysteria, well, hell, the Democrats sure are starting to sound a lot more like a party of build a wall than the party of building bridges. Just take a look at Kamala Harris at the DNC, bragging about an immigration deal her party championed getting the support of the Border Patrol.
Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it.
In case it's not glaringly self-evident, it's not great for a party that purports to promote a sane and humane approach to immigration to tout an endorsement from an institution rife with criminal abuse and torture of immigrants. Yeah, the only reason people aren't running screaming for the hills shouting about how the Democrats sound like far-right lunatics on immigration is because the other team is so far right that when they talk about it, their language is indistinguishable from the people who got tried in Nuremberg when World War II ended.
They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be. And then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we're going to build more.
Wowza. Who says Trump can't read? He definitely read that copy of Mein Kampf everyone says he kept on his nightstand. If you squint, you can see the tortured electoral logic behind the Democratic Party's decision to throw human beings under the bus in pursuit of winning in 2024. Voters care about immigration. Voters think there's some sort of crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. Therefore, they must, as Democrats, show that we can also be tough in pursuit of the winnable moderate voter in the swing state that will be important in the all-important electoral college calculus. Whew, tortured indeed. The people who actually study voter behavior draw altogether different conclusions about the best way to message and move the great block of actual persuadable voters. And they draw some pretty damning conclusions about what happens if you adopt a right-wing framework when you are making your argument. And by people specifically, I'm talking about someone named Anat Shenkar-Osorio. She's been a communications consultant for progressive organizations and politicians for decades now, advising Planned Parenthood, Greenpeace, the AFL-CIO, and yes, Democrats on how to craft winning messages. Unlike a lot of the bloviating pundits, her statements are backed up by research, public polling, and intensive focus groups. All this moral compromise on immigration, on minimum wage, on taxation, on nearly anything that cuts to the core of the Democratic Party's supposed values, all these compromises are usually made so that Democrats can appeal to the so-called moderate voter. Well, damn! Definitely sounds like we should figure out a way to appeal to these people. According to all these pundits, they hold the very key to the kingdom. Calling these particular people moderates might be something of a misnomer, though. Moderate implies that if you go in another direction from them, you'll find extremism. Moderate, swing voter, all gives us a visual of some sort of mythical median viewpoint. If you take everything people think about everything, this moderate is going to be smack dab in the middle. One party says A, the other says B. The way to capture this individual voter is to stake out a position midway between A and B, and you win over the voter. Hence the Democratic Party's approach to immigration. Tough on the border, but not too tough, with a smattering of pathway to citizenship to tide people over. As Shenkar-Osorio says, these people, these voters Democrats are willing to sacrifice their values in pursuit of, aren't median anything. They're all over the place. The people who have their minds made up already tend to have a somewhat consistent ideology in their decision-making. These voters, though, can believe that immigrants are hardworking people who deserve a path to citizenship and that every undocumented immigrant in the country should be rounded up and deported. One might think these things are mutually exclusive, but there are, in fact, millions of people out there with conflicting ideas in their heads about things. Democrats are always trying to find a way to have a little bit of A and a little bit of B. In perhaps the best analogy old Gilmore has ever heard, Democrats see that people are being offered a pizza on one hand and a burger on the other, and trying to give them a pizza burger. The reality is, no one wants a pizza burger, or almost no one. Old Gilmore would demolish a pizza burger right about now. Yes, pepperoni and a burger. Oh, come on. Come to think of it, maybe a better analogy would be tuna fish and apple pie. No one wants a tuna fish apple pie. Ugh. I mean, maybe. I am a gator. Research shows that the way to win these people over and win elections isn't by triangulating some middle point, but by advocating for your way over and over and over again, in clear, direct, and simple terms. These kinds of people, it turns out, draw their cues on the right thing, basically on the thing they hear the most often. And boy, oh boy, when it comes to immigration, thing you hear most often is definitely the Republican view on immigration, even if it's coming from a Democrat. So if Democrats go around talking almost exactly like Republicans about border crisis, an immigration crisis, about the need to get tough on the border, these persuadable voters are naturally going to start thinking in those terms, and more often than not, this pushes them towards Republicans. And besides pushing these undecideds towards a more right-wing set of talking points on immigration, when Dems talk tough on immigration, it also pushes Democratic voters to support more outrageous and violent policies as well, which is how you end up with more Democratic voters now supporting ending birthright citizenship, building a border wall, hell, even mass deportations. Winning this debate and thereby improving the lives of millions of people within the United States and around the world means ditching the harmful, fear-based framework that favors Republicans and the right and embracing a positive alternative vision. We've already described in some detail the idea that you just can't find a midpoint between A and B. You gotta have a whole argument spelled out for folks. We done talked a lot about what point B looks like. The Republican view of immigrants as scary gang members hell-bent on destroying America. Let's talk about what A might look like and why it's a hell of a lot better. Yes, Gator friends, we're talking about freedom of movement. An immigration framework that asks why we don't treat human beings the same way we treat capital and manufactured goods and fruits and vegetables and pizza burgers. Why are there more barriers for the movement of human beings than for a billionaire's bank accounts? Seems odd to me. Most of our current immigration talk in these United States is grounded in a scarcity mindset. There simply ain't enough to go around. The bigwigs riding around in 800-foot yachts want us all to think that the problem isn't a tiny minority of powerful people hoovering up all the world's resources. Look over there! Immigrants! Not enough pie, zero sum. You know, if you're struggling now, imagine how scary it would be if all these people were coming in to take something from you. In a country like the United States, where despite being the richest country in the world, millions of people can't afford a $200 unexpected expense, this scarcity message sure do hit the mark. Let's just get that first big heaping pile of bullshit out of the way. Your corporate overlords, the giant mega billionaires who own the media, they want you pitted against each other. So of course they're going to deploy the oldest Machiavellian trick in the book, divide and conquer. Second oldest Machiavellian trick is how to name said book. The prince is top-notch. It's the secret before the secret. Here's the thing, though. There's plenty to go around. The Cato Institute sucks ass. But they did get something right when they put out a piece in 2020 called 3 Reasons Immigrants Aren't Going to Take Your Job. Since we've been talking about pies and whatnot, let's start with something called a lump of labor fallacy. When racist turds yodel about immigrants coming to take our jobs, this is what they mean. It's a zero-sum job market, and every job secured by an immigrant means one less job for someone else. For people that don't know that much about how national economies work, it sounds like a reasonable enough argument. National economies don't work that way. UK, US, nonprofits, and governments alike, every time someone does an actual study on this, as opposed to auguring the future from Tucker Carlson's drool patterns or whatever the right wing does, the facts are clear. Immigrants grow the economy. They're not taking a slice from you. They make the whole damn pie bigger. Economy, economy, economy. Say it 3 times and the ghost of Adam Smith crawls out of a mirror and offers you a nice bit of tobacco smoke. Now that we know there aren't any negative economic outcomes for actual human beings from immigration, what else you got? Fear, usually. Fear that a so-called open border is an open invitation to crime and general licentiousness. Pandemonium of pandemic proportions. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, hell, almost anyone you might start inviting to think about freedom of movement, they're going to hit you with what they presume to be the ultimate argument stopper. We can't just let anyone come waltzing in, you dummy. We need borders. Every country needs borders to keep out crime and terrorists and general bad vibes. John Washington wrote a book called The Case for Open Borders that exists as a giant, well, actually, middle finger to all this nativist, small-minded nonsense. Old Gilmore read it, and you should too. So here's the thing. For most of U.S. history and world history, there was no such thing as a closed, militarized border. There weren't any walls or fences of much merit along the U.S.-Mexico border until the 1990s. Does that mean the U.S. wasn't a functioning country until the 1990s? It does not. Crime, crime, crime! How will we stay safe without a wall topped with spikes and moats filled with alligators and floating death buoys in the Rio Grande? Greg Abbott, hell of a guy. Not really. Borders actually increase crime. And not just Texas Governor Greg Abbott's crimes against humanity. Look at the U.S.-Mexico border. Since the 1990s, the border has only grown more militarized. Fences, walls, drones, armed border patrol agents. And since the 1990s, the militarized border, the fences, walls, drones, and armed border patrol agents have helped turn the U.S.-Mexico border into a focal point of transnational criminal activity. As John Washington outlines in a Nation article from February 2024, the prohibition of movement makes smuggling people into a lucrative activity. Criminalization of drug use makes the production and transfer of drugs into a lucrative activity. Before 1917, there were no smuggling networks between the U.S. and Mexico. As soon as sections of fence and wall went up, these criminal enterprises sprang up with them to capitalize on the market opportunity. This has been the case for the previous decades, as increased criminalization of the border in turn creates perverse incentives for criminal activity. Since old Mr. Washington said it so well, I think it's worth giving him a direct quotation on the matter. Legalizing migration and drugs would overnight eliminate nearly all the profits on which transnational criminal groups rely and free up the piggish immigration and drug enforcement budgets to address the root causes of addiction and forced migration. A good reference point here would be prohibition. There's not a whole lot of organized crime surrounding the transfer of your favorite Pilsner from the point of manufacture to the point of consumption these days, since there's not really any reason for there to be one. Back in the days of the 18th Amendment, things were a little different. The production, transport, and sale of alcohol was controlled by cartels, or gangs. And it was bloody and horrible, people were killed, and vast fortunes were made by those willing to break the law in pursuit of profit. Sound familiar? The human cost of a militarized border is almost too terrible to contemplate. Every year, hundreds of people die in the treacherous journey to cross between Mexico and the United States. What about when the immigrants arrive here? Fox News keeps telling Grampy Spuds McRacist that immigrants are murdering beautiful white babies on a daily basis. Sorry, Grampy Spuds McRacist. Immigrants commit crime at lower rates than native-born citizens. Look, a racist potato. What else you got? Drain on governments? Nope. Immigrants typically put in more money than they take out for government services. Any serious investigation of the economic impacts of immigration shows that it's a net positive. Immigrants bring new energy, new ideas, the lifeblood of a healthy, growing population. When you cast aside all the fear-mongering, you find that there's really no credible, data-grounded argument for a horrific, militarized approach to immigration. Allowing freedom of movement would make the entire world better off, with some studies showing that it would perhaps make the world twice as rich. According to Rutger Bregman, who wrote another rad book Gilmore has read that you should too, called Utopia for Realists, there is no more effective method for bringing down global poverty than increased migration. If all the world's developed countries let in just 3% more immigrants, $305 billion more to spend. Why should we let borders and accident of birth determine someone's fate in life? Why should we let fear and misinformation trap us into misguided policies and rhetoric that diminish opportunities for all of us? So let's propose an alternative way of thinking about it, one that champions the freedom of movement that existed for human beings for almost all of human history, hell, well into the 20th century in the United States. The idea of a militarized border would have seemed the height of histrionics, the pinnacle of the preposterous, the apex of the absurd. What I'm saying is alligators love alliteration, and we detest discrimination. Freedom of movement means giving human beings the chance to realize their full potential. All of us. Most people want to stay where they are. They have that right. And if people want to move to seek better horizons, they should at least have the same freedom we afford to a billionaire's investment dollars. Come on! There's enough room for all of us everywhere, even right here in Gilmore Swamp. Please bring pie, or that pizza burger thing. Oh man, that sounds good. Gotta go. Oh, that's my tummy rumbling. Gilmore out!